The clash at the Coliseum is on deck. That means it's time for an Out of the Groove annual tradition. Today, I will make my way too early NASCAR playoff predictions. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to a special episode of Out of the Groove. This is one of my favorite videos every single year. I scrutinize heavily over every single selection, and my favorite part actually comes in 8 months or so when the playoffs begin, and I get to look back at this video and see just how wrong I was. My record's actually been pretty good on these predictions in the past, but after last season, with an unprecedented 19 different winners, it was very difficult to narrow my selections down to just 16. I think there are legitimately 24 or 25 drivers who expect to win a race this season. Now, it's safe to say we won't get to 24 or 25 different winners, which means some drivers will disappoint this year. I'm not gonna sit here and just say, oh, everyone's favorite driver is gonna have a breakout year, because that's not possible. Some drivers will have a big year, will impress, others will disappoint, and I think both categories are gonna be pretty full. My job today is to draw that line and predict who finishes above it and who finishes below it. Hopefully I don't make too many enemies out there. Let's get started. I want to begin with a few easy picks. Joey Logano, for example. 4 wins, a very respectable 13.2 average finish. Logano and crew chief Paul Wolfe are running it back. What I love about Joey Logano is he really has no weaknesses. Last year he won at a short track, the Clash. He got a couple wins at those flat ovals, Gateway, Phoenix. He won at a mile and a half. I guess road courses, he hasn't won at a road course in a few years, but there are many good drivers in the Cup Series today who have never won on a road course, so I won't hold that against him. And we know Logano's a great super speedway racer. He's won the Daytona 500. So Joey Logano, Paul Wolfe, that combo, they're making the playoffs this year, no buts. Next up, Chase Elliott. 5 wins last season, led the entire series. Also led the most laps, advanced to his 3rd straight championship 4. The 9 team was up and down in the playoffs, but those first 26 races, they were very consistent. Chase Elliott will make the playoffs this year, as will his teammate Kyle Larson. He didn't back up that 2021 championship season where he won 10 races, but he still won 3. And he had the best average starting position by far in the Cup Series, an average start of 7.9. He won 4 poles. That's great for collecting early stage points. Kyle Larson will make the playoffs, no problems. My 4th pick, and keep in mind, these aren't really in any particular order. I don't know, Chase Elliott might be the 8th seed, but these are just my 16 playoff drivers. But the 4th guy I want to talk about is Ryan Blaney. This is my first maybe slightly risky pick because Ryan Blaney didn't win a race last year, at least not a points-paying race. He did win the All-Star race. Blaney was the only driver, as a matter of fact, to qualify for last year's playoffs solely on points. He did finish with the 3rd most top 5s in the Cup Series last season, very consistent. Last season we had 16 different winners before the playoffs, if we include Kurt Busch, who did remove himself from playoff contention right before the regular season finale. While I do think we'll still see parity this year, all the manufacturers have new front noses, might help even the playing field aerodynamically, but I don't think we'll get 15 or 16 different winners before the playoffs start for the 2nd year in a row. I think we'll get with 13 or 14. So even if Blaney still can't win a race, I'm convinced he will be consistent enough, he's got Penske backing him, to nab one of the spots on points. We gotta add some Toyotas to this list. Denny Hamlin, he's gonna make the playoffs, 2 wins last season, an uncharacteristically bad 15.1 average finish, and that's not terrible, but considering the previous 3 seasons, his average finish was like 8th or 9th. Yeah, a little bit of a drop-off, no doubt, but he and Chris Gabehart have winning speed. He will win at least one of the first 26 races, and while he was inconsistent at times during the regular season, in the playoffs, Denny Hamlin never finished worse than 13th. He had 9 top 10s the final 10 races of the season, so that's some good momentum heading into 2023. If not for Ross Chastain's Hail Melon, Hamlin would have been in the championship 4 yet again. So Hamlin will make the playoffs easily, as will his teammate Christopher Bell. Led JGR with 3 wins last season, advanced all the way to the championship 4, was 2nd in the entire Cup Series with 20 top 10 finishes. I'm very high on Christopher Bell and Adam Stevens. That unit, the 20 team, are going to do great things once again this year. Last year was not a fluke. I believe this is the year they emerge as the clear best team out of that JGR stable. Christopher Bell is about to enter his prime. Adam Stevens is an underrated two-time championship crew chief. They're going to make the playoffs. I mean, is New Hampshire still a regular season race? I mean, if all else fails, Bell will win that race easily. He's literally finished first and second there the last 2 Cup races, and he's never lost an Xfinity race at the Magic Mile. So as long as that race is on the schedule, Bell is going to qualify for the playoffs. Next, and some may disagree with this pick, but Kevin Harvick, in his farewell tour season, will make the playoffs. I think he wins a couple of races like he did last year. Remember, Harvick's playoff chances were kind of in jeopardy until he went back-to-back at Richmond and Michigan late in the summer. I think he will get a win earlier in the season. The whole retirement tour could very well be a distraction. Look at recent history. Jimmy Johnson's final season, didn't win a race, missed the playoffs. Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s final season, didn't win a race, missed the playoffs. Tony Stewart wasn't great his final season, but he did win that race at Sonoma and make the playoffs. Jeff Gordon, though. To me, Jeff Gordon is the standard that every retiring driver is trying to hit. In his final season, in 2015, he won a race, made it all the way to the championship 4. I don't know if Kevin Harvick will make it that deep into the playoffs, but he'll at least qualify for a 16-car playoff. I believe so. I don't expect Harvick and Rodney Childers to go out quietly. While I'm talking about Stewart-Haas racing, I'll make a bold pick here. I think Chase Briscoe is going to make the playoffs. He made the playoffs last season, but his 17.3 average finish was second worst amongst playoff drivers. Briscoe got that win at Phoenix early in the season and then almost won Bristol until he blew it and almost won the Coke 600 until he blew it. But the summer months were a struggle. Came on strong late in the playoffs, 6 top 10s in the final 7 races, advanced all the way to the round of 8, was almost the perfect Cinderella story. Remember the strategy he played at the end of that Martinsville race? He almost made it to Phoenix for the championship. That 14 team just continued to beat the odds all season last year. I think Chase Briscoe, another year older, another year of experience, I think he'll make the playoffs once again this year. I know many of y'all are waiting for me to put this guy on the list, but Ross Chastain, yes, he will also qualify for the playoffs. 2 wins last year, a series high 21 top 10s. Obviously advanced all the way to the championship 4, thanks in large part to that move at Martinsville, finished second in the final standings. It's gonna be tough, I believe, for Trackhouse to back up that season, but I don't expect them to take a huge step backwards by any means, and I think Ross Chastain's gonna continue to lead that team on the racetrack. You know, there are some distractions behind the scenes. Both Chastain and his teammate Suarez are looking for contract extensions, and I can't imagine they won't get a deal done. I think there's mutual interest there, but until the ink has dried on that contract, it is a question, and it could potentially be a distraction, especially early in the year. Chastain's 2 wins came early in 2022. He was consistent in the second half, consistent in the playoffs, but he hasn't won a race since like last April. So hopefully they can find victory lane early once again. That will remove any potential doubt, but I think Chastain will make the playoffs. My next pick, y'all already know, I'm very enthusiastic about this driver, but Kyle Busch, now with Richard Childress Racing, will qualify for the playoffs. Last season was not a good one by Kyle Busch's standards. He only got 1 win, and let's just be honest, it was a fluke. A 16.7 average finish was his worst since 2014. His final points finish was tied for his lowest since joining Joe Gibbs Racing, so it was a bad year. But now he's got a much needed change of scenery. And I believe Kyle Busch is motivated to prove Joe Gibbs Racing, Toyota, wrong. Fans who doubted his move to Richard Childress Racing, Kyle Busch is motivated. And a motivated Kyle Busch, I believe, is a scary Kyle Busch. Go back to 2007, Hendrick lets him go, joins JGR in 08 and wins 8 races. Gets injured in 2015, misses the first third of the season, comes back, goes on a tear, wins the championship. And I just mentioned 2014 was kind of a down year. What did he do the next year? He won the championship. So when things aren't going well for Kyle Busch, when he is motivated to remind the world who he is, Kyle Busch can be great. I think he's going to have a very, very good season with Richard Childress Racing. I'm picking him to make the playoffs easily. Next up, AJ Allmendinger, back in the Cup Series full-time for Kaulig. He'll make the playoffs this year. How many road courses are there in the regular season? 5? Including an all-new race and a new track, the Chicago Street Race. Allmendinger will have a great shot at each of those races. He won a Cup race at the Indy Road Course less than 2 years ago. Last year, he was second at Watkins Glen, I believe, 4th at the Roval, almost won at COTA until he and Ross Chastain got together in the final corner. And that was all on a part-time schedule. This year, he's full-time. He'll be in the car every single week, and that's important. You know, in his 18 starts last year, that's a pretty healthy sample size. His average finish was 15.4. I just mentioned Kyle Busch's average finish was a whole position worse. Chase Briscoe's average finish was 2 positions worse. I expect AJ Allmendinger to win a road course race, but he's proven in Xfinity in recent years he can manage the ovals. I think he can be consistent enough to make it on points even if he doesn't win a race in the regular season. I'm that bullish on AJ Allmendinger this year. If I'm not mistaken, Allmendinger is the first name on this list who didn't make the playoffs last year. Let's add another one. How about Martin Truex Jr.? That's right, he's due for a bounce back season. 0 wins last year, missed the playoffs as a result. We all know that, but let's not forget, he was 5th in the regular season standings, tied for the second most stage wins last year. So they were still good, they just couldn't seal the deal anywhere. Even in the playoffs, steering issue while leading at Darlington, blew a tire while leading at Texas, got spun on pit road while leading at Miami. Anything that could go wrong last year seemed to go wrong for Martin Truex Jr. Yes, there's some distractions. I'm not going to get into his personal stuff off the track, but he has left the door open to possibly retiring at the end of this year. He said recently he's not even going to think about it until maybe September. That could be a distraction, don't get me wrong, but Martin Truex Jr. and James Small are too good to go out like they did last year. Truex is going to win at least one race. He's going to make the playoffs. You can count on it. Gosh, we're starting to run out of space. There's only 4 slots remaining. I gotta go with Tyler Reddick, one of the biggest free agent splashes in recent NASCAR history, joining Toyota in 2311 Racing. Last year with RCR, he won 3 races. For a brief moment, I thought he was the championship favorite. That did not end well for me as he was eliminated in the first round, but 3 wins, and that was in an RCR car. What can he do now that he has that Toyota backing? 2311 last year with Kurt Busch, won a race early in the season. Expectations are high this year. One big issue Reddick ran into last season was, blowing tires, parts breaking. Those are things that 2311 can hopefully avoid. If Reddick is able to finish some of those races from last year, he could have won 5 or 6 races. I'm not saying he's going to win that many with 2311 in his first year, but I think he could easily match last year's total. He'll make the playoffs, no doubt. Gosh, only 3 spots remaining. I think I gotta put his teammate Bubba Wallace in as well. I've been very accurate on my Bubba Wallace predictions the last couple of years. I think this is the season. 3rd year with 2311 in that 23 car. This is the year he makes the playoffs. He's managed to win races each of the last 2 years, but they've both been too late. They both come during the playoffs. The problem is each of the past 2 seasons, Bubba Wallace has started off slow. They didn't have the speed to contend. Last year, it was the pit crew that let Bubba down early on. They get better as the season goes on, and then by the end of the year, they're in contention. So the key this year is to start strong. If they do that, they will win probably 1 or 2 races and make the playoffs easily. In the first half of 2021, he didn't have any top 10s. Last year, in the first 12 races, he only had 1. You gotta come out of the gates stronger. I think they will this year. This is the season Bubba Wallace qualifies for the Cup Series playoffs. Gosh, only 2 spots left, and there are some heavy hitters I have not mentioned yet. I have not mentioned 2 Hendrick drivers. I haven't mentioned last year's Daytona 500 winner, a Penske Ford. I haven't mentioned Ross Chastain's Trackhouse teammate, the RFK Cars, Legacy Motor Club, that young Joe Gibbs Racing rookie in the 54. There are a lot of big-name drivers driving for very competitive teams who I have not mentioned yet, and I only have 2 spots left to fill. All right. We'll go Alex Bowman. The jury is still out on just how good Alex Bowman truly is. He's proven he can win races in Hendrick equipment. He's proven he can make the playoffs. In fact, Bowman has not yet missed the playoffs since joining Hendrick Motorsports. And in my opinion, that 48 team got better this offseason. No disrespect to Greg Ives, but bringing Blake Harris over from front row, guy had a tremendous year with Michael McDowell. 12 top 10s in that 34 car. You bring him to the 48, give him Hendrick resources. You give him a driver like Alex Bowman who is motivated this year. He's in a contract year. His sponsor's in a contract year. You could argue that's a lot of pressure, but I think that's motivation. Alex Bowman, Blake Harris, that 48 car, I couldn't pick against them. Look, Bowman last season drove me a little crazy because they started off strong and they finished pretty strong until the injury at Texas. But over the summer, they didn't do anything. Nothing. They were terrible. They were an afterthought. I hate that kind of inconsistency, especially out of a Hendrick Motorsports entry, but this year, with Blake Harris especially, I think that 48 will be much more consistent. They're going to make the playoffs, if you ask me. Oh, that means I have only 1 spot left. Look, I almost had Eric Jones making the playoffs. I'm very high on Eric Jones. I think now with Dave Ellens joining him for their 2nd year. I mean, he won the Southern 500 at the end of last season. They seem to be peaking at the end. Good momentum coming into this year. You bring Jimmy Johnson in-house. Great wisdom, great advice, great experience over there, but I just couldn't quite put him into the top 16. I hope Jones wins a race. I think he's more than capable of winning 2 or 3 races this year, even in that car. But there are so many heavy hitters still on the board, I just couldn't put him in the top 16. Austin Cindric, Rookie of the Year, made the playoffs last season, but if not for that Daytona 500 win, he wouldn't. Without how many winners there were, Cindric would not have made the playoffs without that season opening win. 9 top 10s in a Penske car. I expect him to get better. That was his rookie season. I expect him to improve, but I couldn't pick him for the 16th spot. Daniel Suarez, and this one pains me as well because he had a breakout season in 2022, got his first win, a huge win, made the playoffs, and even advanced to the round of 12. Had a very solid playoff run, but he lagged behind his teammate Ross Chastain in pretty much every key statistic. And I mentioned this earlier, but right now he doesn't have a contract past this year. And I know Daniel Suarez is used to dealing on, 1-year contracts and always handling that uncertainty, but I just worry it's going to be a perfect storm. There are too many great teams and drivers 8th through 25th on the grid that I have him out. The 2 RFK Fords, man, Chris Buescher with that huge win at the Bristol night race. I want to put him in there, but I just don't know what I'm going to get. And Brad Keselowski last season, huge disappointment. He can still drive a race car. The guy should still be in his prime, and they showed some improvement towards the end of the year, squeaked out a couple of top 10s. He led 109 laps at Bristol, that same race his teammate won. I just don't know what to expect. Every year it seems like Chris Buescher is right around 20th in points. If he can get a win before the playoffs begin, then obviously he'll make it in, but that's a big, big if. I just didn't see enough consistency out of the RFK cars last year. Couldn't put either of them in. Who's left? Austin Dillon? Guy always seems to find a way to sneak into the playoffs. Last year was that win at Daytona, got some help from his teammate Reddick. I don't think he makes the playoffs this year. The 2 rookies, Ty Gibbs in a Joe Gibbs Racing car, is gonna have the equipment, but the experience, the mental and emotional maturity, I'm not yet convinced. Same with Noah Gragson, Legacy Motor Club. I like that they brought his Xfinity crew chief up to Cup with him, but that's a big unknown. That car last year had 1 top 10 the whole season. I'm high on Ryan Preece over at Stewart-Haas Racing, but again, that car finished like 26th in points last year. I think Preece will improve it, but I'm not picking him to make the playoffs in his first year. Eric Almirola, again, I feel like he has 1 foot out the door. Justin Haley, boy, he had a sneaky good playoff run, even though obviously he wasn't a playoff driver. He ended last year strong. I think he only had 2, 3 DNFs all year long. I think the only DNF Justin Haley had due to a crash last season was that massive rain crash at Daytona, not even his fault. So Haley's going to take care of his equipment. I just don't know that they have the speed or he has the experience to win a race or finish top 10 enough to make it in on points. So I couldn't quite sneak Justin Haley in. Who else am I missing? McDowell, losing Blake Harris I think is going to hurt. I hope he has another good season, but I'm just not convinced he will. So process of elimination, who's left? My last playoff pick is William Byron. I can't ignore the fact that he won twice last season. He would have had 3rd win too if Logano doesn't bump him out of the way at Darlington. 3rd most laps led last season. He was just so inconsistent. He started off strong, finished well, made it to the round of 8 in the playoffs, but over the summer, there was an 18-race stretch, middle of the season, where William Byron in a Hendrick Chevy with his crew chief Rudy Fugle, they had success in trucks, managed only 1 top 10. A single top 10 in 18 races. That's terrible. No other way to slice it. So the inconsistency, the uncertainty last year drove me insane, much like his teammate Alex Bowman. I feel like every year people talk about William Byron like he's going to be the next Jeff Gordon, the next big thing. They're just waiting for him to explode, and it hasn't happened yet. I know he's young, but he's going into his 5th, 4th, 5th, 6th? 5th. He started in 2018, right? 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. 6th! Oh my gosh, he's going into his 6th full-time Cup Series season. It's got to happen sooner rather than later. Maybe this is the year. William Byron rattles off 5 wins, makes it to the championship 4. This could be the year. He's got the equipment. He's got the group around him to make it happen. Just needs some more consistency. So William Byron driving a Hendrick car, I have to put him in the playoffs. Those are my 16 playoff predictions. This was tough. Probably the hardest year of way too early playoff predictions since I started doing them on this channel. Let me know. Do you agree with my selections? Are there any key names that you disagree with? Who would you have in instead? Let me know down in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. That's going to do it for this episode. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button as well for all things NASCAR. And as always, a big thank you to my Patreon supporters as well. I will see you all again later this week. Got some exciting things to announce very, very soon. Thank you so much for watching. Take it easy, y'all.